Army Lieutenant Colonel and Intelligence Officer, Texas Public Policy Foundation Vice President Chuck DeVore, and former Navy SEAL and Wisconsin congressional candidate Derek Van Orden. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, thanks.
Chuck, let me start with you. What do you make of these new satellite images showing that stalled convoy about 40 miles long, we're told? It sounds like they're now redeploying, we're told, into forest and tree lines. What does that tell you about the operations of the Russian army, if anything?
Well, I think they're going into defensive positions. They have been savaged by the Ukrainians. They have been strung out and not able to be mutually supporting. And so they just don't have enough force. They don't have enough mass to the north of Kyiv. Their only hope to get their stalled offensive going, I think, is in the south. You also see them shifting forces away from the Battle of Kharkiv and trying to reduce Sumy to the northeast. They have to do that because they have to open up their supply lines from the east to Kyiv. And the Ukrainians are doing a marvelous job interdicting those supply lines. So right now, I think that the dispersal of that big convoy northwest of Kyiv is because they're going into defensive positions.
Well, here's something from Avril Haines, the National Intelligence Director, talking about possibly what Putin misunderestimated about the Ukrainians.
We assess Moscow underestimated the strength of Ukraine's resistance and the degree of internal military challenges we are observing in the Russian military, which include an ill-constructed plan, morale issues, and considerable logistical challenges.
So what do you make of that, Derek? Where does Putin go from here? Do you think he thought this was over in a matter of 3 or 4 days? And where does he go now, appearing more and more to be sort of a cornered animal?
Well, I find it hard to believe that I actually agree with an assessment that just came out of the Biden administration. That's the first time that's happened in a very long period of time. Vladimir Putin grossly underestimated the capabilities of the Ukrainian military, including the fact that 120,000 Ukrainian civilians signed up for their territorial defense force immediately following the Russian invasion. So what Vladimir Putin didn't understand is that the Ukrainian people are versed in warfare. They plan on protecting the soil of their nation, and they're going to do it to the best of their ability. He also underestimated the fact that Ukraine borders 5 NATO countries, and they're able to resupply them immediately. So he overstepped his bounds. He got way over his skis, and the appropriate international response to this is to continue to arm the Ukrainian resistance, including giving them MiG-29s if that comes up, and to make sure that the Ukraine can defend their own territorial integrity.
And Wall Street Journal reporting tonight that decision from the U.S. to stay out of that, to not facilitate the transfer of those MiGs, went all the way to the president himself. They add this, saying by so ostentatiously not sending the fighters and saying the reason is fear of escalation, Mr. Biden is telling the Russian what he doesn't have to worry about. Instead of deterring Mr. Putin, Mr. Biden is letting the Russian deter the U.S. Chuck, agree or disagree?
This whole public debate over the MiG-29s to Ukraine has been terribly harmful. It's worse than a fiasco. It's like a clown car. The fact that this was all dragged out in public, you heard the Secretary of State Blinken say, yes, it's on, then it was vetoed by the Pentagon. We have done significant damage to our credibility in the face of nuclear blackmail, and this has serious implications, follow-on implications, for the defense of Taiwan from the People's Republic of China. This is just a terrible, terrible situation.
Well, and to the point about China, this is something interesting the CIA Director Bill Burns said today about China watching this and the calculations that come from watching Ukraine-Russia play out. Here's what he said.
I think the Chinese leadership looks at Europe not just as a market, but as a kind of player with whom they can have an independent relationship and try to look for ways in which they can drive wedges between us and our European allies. And what President Putin has so successfully done is to make that much less likely.
So, Derek, another missed calculation by Putin in the fact that he may not have realized that this actually was going to make the European allies and the alliance with the U.S. even stronger, the NATO alliance, which he hates, even stronger.
Right. It's absolutely correct. Here's what we have to understand, is that the world can easily divest from Russia, but the fact that McDonald's is leaving and Coca-Cola is no longer going to sell their products to the Russian government and the peoples is not going to weaken Russia. The fact is that the entire world cannot divest from China. We're so ingrained in their economy and into ours, that we would not be able to separate like we can with Russia. So Vladimir Putin thought that we wouldn't be able to divest from his economy. Xi knows that we can't. So again, Putin watched Biden abandon tens of thousands of Americans and our allies to terrorists in Afghanistan. It emboldened his invasion of the Ukraine. Xi is watching how the West is responding to Russia, and he understands that he has a much bigger trump card than Putin has to play, and that's the fact that he is integrated across the board into all of these economies in the free world, and we cannot separate from him as easily as we have from Russia.
That is a different ball game. All right, Derek and Chuck, thank you both, your service to the country and to being with us tonight. If you'll come back the next hour, we'd love to continue the conversation.
Love to.
Right, well, great to see you again.